tumulong through Bayanihan 1 at sa mga iba't ibang programa natin, ay nakabawi po ang government consumption. Nag-grow po or nag-increase siya by 22.1%. Yung next part po ng GDP, kung aalamin po natin yung breakdown, ito ay investment. Bumagsak ito by 53.5% kasi nagsara po yung mga businesses, hindi po sila pwede mag-construct or mag-continue ng kanilang mga investment. Yung exports po natin, negative din, pati na rin po yung import. Ito po ay dulot ng ating ECQ. Pero gaya po ng sinabi ko, ang prioridad natin ay to save lives. Another way to look at the GDP ay yung supply side. Mapapansin niyo po na ang GDP, pwede po i-break down ito into agriculture, industry, manufacturing, and services. Ang maganda po dito, yung ating agriculture sector ay positive growth, 1.6%. Ito ay katumbas more or less ng population growth. Ibig sabihin po, we are able to supply enough food for the people. At yung lumabas po yung inflation rate 2 days ago, mababa rin po ang food inflation. At ito ay, ang dahilan po dito ay tuloy-tuloy po yung production in agriculture, yung supply chain po, hindi po natin hinarang. Pero yung industry, manufacturing, and services, sila po ay medyo hindi maganda talaga yung naging resulta kasi negative lahat po ng growth nila. Ngayon, ang tugon po ng gobyerno ay yung ating 4-pillar strategy to fight COVID. At nakikita niyo po sa slide na ito, from March until June, we allocated a total of 655 billion pesos. 596 billion under Pillar 1 is to support the vulnerable groups. At 59 billion ay nasa Pillar 2, which is to help the healthcare sector fight COVID. Kasama na rin dito yung ating social amelioration program for the poorest 18 million low-income households and yung ating small business wage subsidy, wherein 3.1 million workers were able to get between 5,000 to 8,000 pesos for 2 months. So ito po yung halimbawa ng tugon ng gobyerno during the emergency stage. Ngayon po, pagpasok po natin ng second quarter, lalo na po yung nasa yung June sa GCQ period, nakita niyo po na ang ating manufacturing, bumagsak nga po siya, pero nakabawi na konti. Nag-U-turn na, if you look at the right-hand corner, nag-U-turn na po yung ating manufacturing. Hindi na po ganyan kalala yung decline. Ito ay pansin din po sa ating exports. Yung next slide po, nag-U-turn din po yung ating exports. Ang maganda po dito, yung ating exports to China, and China is one of our biggest trading partner, positive na po yan as of June. So what we are seeing here is a gradual recovery. Yung imports din po natin ay nagre-recover na. You also see the U-turn no, sa bandang kanan. Yung import po kasi mahalaga yan kasi we are importing a lot of capital equipment, lalo na po for the Build program. Mahalaga rin po yan kasi 70% of our import is for consumption. So we are hoping in the coming months na babalik na po ito sa positive territory. Ngayon po, nahirapan po talaga ang buong mundo sa pag-fight against COVID. Ang maganda po dito, yung ating ekonomiya, nagsimula po ito pagpasok natin ng 2020 with a very strong fundamentals. Yung ating GDP growth in the last 4 years ay 6.6%. Prior to COVID, maabot na po natin yung upper middle income country. Our inflation is low and stable. Malaking tulong po ang rice tarification kasi 10 peso per kilo cheaper ang bigas natin kumpara sa 2 years ago, no? Bago mag-rice tarification. We have one of the strongest fiscal positions in our entire history. Our Build program is responsible for a significant decline in our poverty, unemployment, and underemployment rate. At recognize po ang ating prudent and responsible fiscal policy and macroeconomic management globally with investment grade rating from BBB+ to A-. Yan po yung dahilan kung bakit confident po kami na kahit hirap po tayo ngayon ay makakabawi po tayo. Now, ang sitwasyon ngayon ay nalaman po natin na we have to be living with the virus. A few months ago, ang naisip po natin, siguro 6 months lang po yung COVID tulad ng SARS. Pero ang consensus po ng buong mundo, lalo na po yung mga ating eksperto, ay yung virus is not going to go away. easily, and we will have to live with it for a longer period of time habang hinihintay po natin yung vaccine. And isang news report ng Nikkei Asian Review ay nagsabi na 70% of countries, or 126 out of 188 countries, are increasingly seeing more infections. Ibig sabihin, they are on their second or third wave. Even countries that have been successful earlier ay nakikita po nila na hindi po ito madaling masolusyonan yung virus. So this will be a drawn-out struggle. We are actually in a marathon, no? Rather than a sprint. So dapat pag-isipan po natin ng mabuti kung ano po yung tamang tugon natin para hindi po mawala ng resources next year or the year after kung lalo pa magtagal ang problema. So ngayon po, sabi po ni Thomas Pueyo, isang eksperto, na we are basically, we have to dance with this virus. Yung ginawa po natin yung ECQ, we were in the hammer stage. Dahil sa ginawa po natin in the first 100 days under the ECQ and MECQ, we were able to bring down the total number of cases if we had not done anything. Ngayon po ay nasa dance stage na tayo. Ito po yung nakikita nyong up, down sa right side, yung green graph, wherein we will have to dance with the virus. Kung dumadami po yung infection, we will have to quarantine and close down the economy as we are doing now under MECQ. Ang maganda po dito, kung gagamitin po natin ang next 2 weeks in the best way possible to prepare the healthcare system, then the earlier we can open the economy. Pag bumaba po yung cases, we can gradually open. Pag dumami po yung case, we will have to also have some form of closure. So ito po yung situation natin. We have to rebalance. Our priority now is not just saving lives from COVID. It is saving lives from both COVID and other factors. Ano po yung other factors? Ito po yung iba pang mga sakit tulad ng cancer, diabetes, dengue, at yung gutom din. Kaya binabalanse po natin ng maayos. Ang isa pong kailangan po natin ibalanse ay yung short-term goal and long-term goal. Marami pong nagsasabi, lalo na po yung mga businessmen, na kailangan ibuksan yung ekonomiya. Pero kung marami naman po ang makakasakit at mamamatay, hindi rin po natin makakamit yung magandang takbo ng ating ekonomiya. That is why we have to balance. We have to take 2 steps forward, and sometimes we have to learn to take 1 step back. So ito po yung kalagayan po natin na kailangan po balanse. Ngayon po, ano po ang tugon natin sa problema natin ngayon? 3 po ang ating components sa recovery program. Ang una po ay yung Bayanihan 2, ang pangalawa ay yung Build, Build, Build program, at yung pangatlo ay yung 2021 budget. Ang focus ko po ngayon ay ang latest developments sa Bayanihan 2 or yung Bayanihan to Recover as One. Ang sitwasyon po ng Bayanihan 2 ay approved na po ng House of Representatives on second reading 2 days ago. Yung Senate naman po last week na approve na niya on third reading. So ang alam po namin, base sa schedule, ay i-approve na po ng House of Representatives sa Lunes at magkakaroon po ng bicameral. Ang magandang balita po dito ay marami po tayong nakalaan na tulong para sa una, healthcare system. Pangalawa, enhanced tracing, testing, tracing. Alam po ng mamamayan na masakit po sila, handa pong tumulong ang ating hospital system, then that will restore consumer confidence. They will go out, they will buy, they will spend, and that will help the economy. Malaking tulong din ang ibibigay po natin sa public transport kasi kailangan din naman magtrabaho. Kung bukas yung ekonomiya pero yung public transport ay hindi fully open, hindi po rin effective yan. Pero kailangan po natin gawin ito in the safest possible manner. Meron rin po tayong nakalaan na tulong para sa mga critically affected sectors and workers in ECQ areas. And finally, we are going to provide capital infusion to the government financial institutions so that they can lend more, especially to the small businesses. So ito po yung laman ng Bayanihan 2. Ito ay available in both the House and the Senate version. Ang dinagdag po ng House sa Bayanihan 2 version nila ay yung guide or arise provision. Ito ay para bigyan po ng equity support ang mga strategically but distressed firms. na kailangan po natin para yung ekonomiya natin ay lumago in the coming years. Yung isa pang pinasok po ng House ay yung fees provisions. Ang nilalaman nito ay yung to allow the banks to dispose their bad loans and assets. Kasi kung hindi po nila ma-dispose yan, wala po silang pondo para tulungan ang iba pang mga businesses na kailangan ng tulong. So by allowing them to dispose their bad loans and assets, they can free up more capital to lend their business. Kasama rin dito yung pag-guarantee ng field guarantee ng micro, small, and medium enterprise loans. Kasi alam po natin na yung bangko ay risk-averse. Ibig sabihin, unlike before, mas maingat po sila magpautang. Pero kung bibigyan po natin ng guarantee ang utang, ay mas marami po yung matutulungan. At lahat na ito, in the medium term, ay yung pag-update po natin ng Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022. Ang priority natin ay matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay pa rin. Pero ang secondary focus po natin is how to make the Philippines a healthy and resilient one. So malapit na po ilabas ng NEDA yung ating updated Philippine Development Report. At
Piling. Ganito guys, sir. Ganito guys, sir, Chua. Yan na. Tali na, PhilHealth. Kailangan ikulong na.
Habang sila yung nag-aaral. Para report lang po ang nangyayari sa Cavite, fake news po na ako ay lumalaban sa gobyerno dahil hindi kami nagkakatugma ng pananaw tungkol sa paano pagpatakbo dito sa krisis. Ito po ay kasing fake ng buhok ng aking katabi. Wag ho kayong maniniwala na umihiwalay po ako. Ang number of cases na positive po ay 756 active cases sa Cavite. Ang 64% ng aming mga kama sa mga ospital ay occupied. 79% ng mga ICU beds ay occupied. At ang aming fatality rate ay pareho rin sa national average. Ang nag-concentrate ng lalawigan ngayon ay ang para sa educational plan na ginagawa namin para sa school year 2020 and 2021. Ang aming project po ay itong susunod na buwan ay launch po namin ang free wifi program para sa lahat ng mga estudyanteng pampubliko ng ating lalawigan. Ito po ay unlimited para sa ating mga estudyante pero ngunit puro sa mga educational applications lamang. Ito po ay libre, ito po ay gastos ng ating lalawigan at ito po ay gagamitin rin para sa kontra COVID. Pag titingnan mo po naman sa tulungan para sa national government ay sumasang-ayon po kami sa kanilang sinasabi. Kung di kami naman nagtutugma, ako po naman ay nakikisama. Mahirap naman po na ako ay gobernador na sabi ko lagi na sumunod sa patakaran, pero pagdating ng araw, kung naman matigas ang ulo, di lalong titigas ang ulo ng mga taga Cavite. Kaya kung ano naman sinabi sa amin ng nakakataas, kami po ay sumusunod at nakikisama. Ang Cavite po ay on the way to recovery. Bumababa po ang aming transmission cases. At kung mapapansin niyo po sa lahat ng lalawigan na nakapaligid sa Metro Manila, ang pinakamababa po na growth rate ng COVID ay doon po sa Cavite. Kaya andito po ngayon para magsabi na ang Cavite po, ang inyong lingkod po ay nakikiisa sa ating Pangulo at nakikiisa sa IATF kung ano man ang kanilang mga patakaran. Salamat po.
Well, napansin niyo po, talagang malapit na kaibigan ko itong si Governor John Vic. Yung sa sinabi niya po na kamukha ko si Kong Remulla, well, alam niyo po, ang sabi ng mga taga Cavite nung kami umiikot during kampanya, kami daw po ni Gov. John Vic ang magkamukha. Pero nagpipilit po si Congressman Remulla na kami naman daw po ang magkamukha. Pero sa akin po, kakampihan ko po yung mga taga Cavite. Kami po ni Gov. John Vic ang magkamukha. Maski hindi po niya inaamin ngayon. Anyway, sa dating panahon po, bago magkaroon ng ECQ, kasing katawan din po kami ni Gov. John Vic. Now, tawagin na po natin ang ating mga reporters.
Pwede ba magtanong? Pwede ba magtanong, Harry?
Ano tatanong mo?
Kasi may balita sa Quezon City na yung ostrich daw na nakawala ay alaga mo. Totoo ba yun? Kasi
Ano na?
yung ostrich na nakawala sa Quezon City ay alaga mo.
Hindi po.
Kasi dati dolphin lang ang hilig mo eh. Ngayon daw,
Hindi
pati
po.
yung ostrich.
Ngayon po, meron na rin po akong baka at meron na rin akong mga baboy. Pero hindi po akin yung ostrich. Pero kung paampun po sa akin nung may-ari yung ostrich, ampunin ko po.
Okay.
Okay, first question po.
Kinaklaro ko lang.
Trisha Terada, CNN Philippines.
Good afternoon po, and good afternoon to Governor and to Sec Carl and to Sec Vergere po. Secretary, dun lang po, since you mentioned that we had this breaking news that the President is ordering the task force to investigate the anomalies in PhilHealth, we presume nakarating na po kay Pangulo itong mga allegation and revelation sa Senate hearing about PhilHealth. We're interested to know, ano po yung naging initial na reaction ng Pangulo? Is he surprised, or is this something that the President is learning just now, or something that he somehow knows already in the past, sir?
From the wordings po of the memorandum, mukhang exasperated na po ang Presidente, no? Kasi napakadami na pong investigasyon na ginawa ng Kamara at ng Senado dito sa PhilHealth. Pero wala pa rin po nangyayari dyan sa PhilHealth. Kaya minabuti na niya na itong sa memorandum niya, binigyan niya ng kapangyarihan hindi lamang para mag-imbestiga, hindi lang para maglitis, kundi para mag-impose ng preventive suspension doon sa lahat ng mga inaimbestiga sa PhilHealth. No? Hindi pa po kasi nangyayari ito, at habang nananatili po dyan yung mga iniimbestigahan, meron din silang mga pagkakataon na pakialaman ng mga ebidensya, itago mga ebidensya kung hindi ito sirain. No? So tingin ko, as a lawyer, si Presidente is exasperated. Gusto na niyang matigil talaga itong korupsyon sa PhilHealth, at gusto na niya na talagang mengipin itong task force na binuo niya. At pansinin niyo po, ang composition po nito, hindi lamang po si Department of Justice Secretary Maynard Guevara na mamumuno nito. Kasama na rin po dito ang Office of the Ombudsman, ang Commission, yung Commission on Audit, ang PACC, at yung tinalaga niyang USEC ng Office of the Special Assistant to the President na si Yusek Kitain ay kasama rin po sa investigasyon nito. So this is not an ordinary investigation. They will in fact exercise the power of preventive suspension and lifestyle check. So ang mensahe po sa mga buhayan ng PhilHealth, tapos na po ang maliligayang araw nyo dyan. Goodbye.
There's this,
Team po, kasama po natin si Yusek Vergere. So kung meron po tayong katanungan kay Yusek Vergere, nandyan po siya.
Sir, so we're expecting heads to rule. And at the same time, sir, sabay-sabay ko na sir yung mga question about PhilHealth po, no? There's this common sentiment na bakit daw po ganito yung sitwasyon na sentiment na, like for example, napabalita in the past few months na may nakulong dahil sa pagnanakaw ng dalawang data ng luncheon meat. And kapag small time na magnanakaw, grabe daw po yung parusa and panghihiyang dinaranas. Samantala, yung mga big time na nagnanakaw, let's say corrupt officials, parang Mendes mukhang nag-ini-enjoy lang po nila yung buhay and they seem to get away with what they're doing. How does the palace wish to respond to this? And at the same time, sir, ano po yung plano ng government dun sa allegation na posibleng mabankrupt yung health by next year?
Well, una-una, I don't think that's a fair statement. No? Early on sa administrasyon ni Presidente, ang una-una niyang tinanggal ay yung aktibo sa kanyang kampanya, no? Na naging kalihim ng Department of Interior and Local Government. Tinanggal din niya yung kanyang opisyal na tagapagsalita noong kampanya, no? Sa National Irrigation Administration. Napakadami ko na pong sinabi na tinanggal. Meron siyang tinanggal sa SSS. Nagalit pa sa akin yung tinanggal niya sa SSS. Akala nila ako lang nagsasalita. Gaya ng sinasabi ni General Morales na I don't speak for the President. No? So marami na po yung mga opisyales dahil ang pangako naman po ng Presidente, zero tolerance sa korupsyon. Kaya nga po ulitin ko, nung dinidispute ako ng mga PhilHealth na wala raw akong authority na magsalita para sa Presidente, ito na po ang patunay. Nagkakaisa po kami ni Presidente bilang kanyang tagapagsalita, zero tolerance to corruption. Wag po kayong magkakamali. So that's not a fair question, I think, dahil hindi po natotolerate ni Presidente ang korupsyon. Pag nakakarating sa kanya, sibak, sibak, sibak. At napakadami ko na pong naanunsyo ng sibak. Ang feeling ko po, executioner na ako ng mga taong gobyerno, taga-anunsyo na kung sino na naman ang sisibakin. And I will be delighted to announce in due course kung sinong sususpindihin at sino ang sisibakin sa PhilHealth. That would be the most delightful experience in my career as presidential spokesperson. Pangalawa po, yung tanong ninyo ay, ano yung tanong na pangalawa, Trish? Sorry, carried away ako dun sa una mong tanong, ha?
Yes, sir. How does the palace wish to respond naman po sa allegation na posibleng mabankrupt daw po yung PhilHealth in the next? Ano po yung magiging natin to avoid this po?
Well, okay, bilang pangunahing otor po sa mababang kapulungan ng universal healthcare, hindi po mangyayari yan. Eventually, PhilHealth is guaranteed by government. Kung hindi po sapat, gobyerno po talaga ang dadagdag ng budget sa PhilHealth galing po sa kaba ng taong bayan. Bagamat kinakailangan po natin dyan sa PhilHealth ay mga taong mangangalaga ng mabuti ng pera ng kaba ng bayan, lalong-lalo na yung kontribusyon ng mga miyembro niya at yung mga subsidy na ibinibigay ng national government. Hindi po natin papayagan mabangkarote ang PhilHealth kahit ano po ang mangyari.
Secretary, sir, may I go to please?
Garbled, hindi namin marinig, Trish.
Spokes, may please go to Yusek Vergere.
Yusek Vergere, question is for you.
Sir.
Hi ma'am, good afternoon po. Ma'am, follow up lang po kanina dun sa press conference ng DOH. Yung dun po sa ating code na gagawin, ilang tao po or ilang Filipinos yung target po natin ma-check for symptoms under MECQ? And dun lang po siguro sa medyo finer details. Literally ma'am, tama po ba mga ngatok magbahay itong ating mga health teams po to find out kung sino po itong mga symptomatic cases po?
Yes, thank you for that question, Trish. No, para mas maliwanag sa lahat, hindi tayo nagta-target ng tao because hindi pa nga natin alam kung sino sa kanila yung may symptoms, sino sa kanila yung exposed. What we are targeting are the clusters of or areas with clustering of infection. At dito sa next 2 weeks, may na-identify na tayo na 10 barangay dito sa National Capital Region na pupuntahan ng ating code teams kasama ang ating National Task Force at saka ang ating Secretary at iba pang gabinete, no, nakasama nila ibang member agencies ng IATF. Ang ating gagawin dito is, as we have said, we are adopting the Dharavi model in Mumbai, no, kung saan nagbahay-bahay sila, kumatok sila, nag-imbestiga sila or nag-ask sila ng questions. It's like we're tracing people who have symptoms in the barangay, what they are doing when they have symptoms, and also checking sino yung mga exposed, no? Hindi lang yung talagang may symptoms ang hahanapin natin, hahanapin din natin yung mga close contacts nito mga exposed na to para bigyan sila ng advice na kailangan isolated sila. We will also check the status ng compliance na dito sa home quarantine na sabi natin. Kasi nga, we have observed that a lot of our positive individuals who are staying at home are not really compliant with single bedroom, single CR, and no vulnerable population at home. Yan yung mga gagawin. And of course, we'll do extensive contact tracing and swabbing of those who are eligible to be swabbed pag pinuntahan dyan sa area.
USEC, and thank you, Secretary Roque. Salamat po.
Now? USEC Roque.
Okay, good afternoon, Secretary Roque. Ang first question, galing po kay Arian Meres, and follow-up po ito. PhilHealth, has the President spoken to General Morales regarding the alleged corruption? And ano daw po action ni President the PhilHealth corruption controversy?
Pandemic na po, binuo ng Presidente itong task force na ito na meron pong ngipin, no? Dahil meron siyang power to investigate, prosecute, suspend, and punish. Well, ang punish po siyempre matapos po magkaroon ng pagliliti sa hukuman.
Secretary, kung nakausap daw ng Presidente si General
Mutan academic na po. Ang Presidente po ngayon ay mas concerned doon sa pangangalap ng katotohanan at siguro po dahil ang ginawa na nga po niya ay isang legal remedy, wala na pong dahilan naman kung para pakausapin si General Morales. General Morales and the rest of PhilHealth will be given their day in the task force. Their positions will be heard and all the evidence will be processed by this body composed of the DOJ Secretary, the Ombudsman, the COA, Civil Service Commission, PACC, and USEC Kitain.
Okay. Secretary, question for Secretary Carl Chua. Dalawa po yung tanong ni Arian Meres for Secretary Chua. With the reversion daw po to MECQ of Metro Manila and nearby provinces, how much daw po how much of the economy is left working, and can you describe the impact of this to the economy?
Thank you po sa tanong. Yung una po, yung nasa full ECQ po tayo, mga 25% lang po ng economy yung bukas. Ngayon po, yung pumunta po tayo sa GCQ, and yung ibang lugar po ng ating bansa ay MGCQ, 75%. Ang sitwasyon po natin ngayon, bumalik po tayo sa mga 50%. That is the MECQ in the Metro Manila and surrounding provinces plus GCQ and elsewhere. So medyo bumaba po yung percent ng ekonomiya na bukas. Ang implication po nito, in the short term, it will of course have an impact on our economic growth. Pero ang mahalaga dito, kung hindi po kasi natin tugunan yung mga kulang pa sa ating healthcare system and our response, then this problem will prolong itself. So ang maganda ngayon ay give this 2-week period a chance so that we can strengthen the healthcare system, address the concerns of our healthcare workers so that we can sustain our recovery. Kaysa naman wala pa tayong ginawa at marami pang ang ma-infect or magkasakit. Salamat po.
Yung second question niya, Secretary Carl, earlier forecast says third quarter GDP will be better than second quarter. Do you think the two-week MECQ will have a significant impact on third quarter GDP, and how?
Kung yung ating MECQ ay ma-contain po natin in the next 2 weeks and we can improve our healthcare system, then this will actually be good for the economy overall. Not immediate, but in the near term. Kaya po ng sinabi ko, if we did nothing right now, and continued po yung ating GCQ while the healthcare system is in dire need of more help, then hindi po sustainable ang ating economic recovery. That's why I think it is better that we take one step back so that we can take two steps forward next time so that mas sustainable yung ating recovery path. Salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Carl Chua.
Thank you. Yusek P. Aranada Frappler, please.
Hi, sir. Sir, does the creation of the PhilHealth Task Force mean Duterte has lost trust in CEO Ricardo Morales? And what will be Morales' status while the probe is ongoing?
That to the task force dahil ang task force po ay may power to to suspend individuals, no. I'm sure with a high profile membership consisting no less of the Secretary of Justice, the Ombudsman, COA chair and the CSC chair, that they know how to use the power of preventive suspension correctly, no. So let's just say the president deferred to these agencies and deferred to their appreciation of evidence on whether or not to prevent, to suspend anyone preventively, no, in the course of the investigation.
Okay. Sir, second question. You said earlier it's not true that the Philippines has more COVID cases than Indonesia, just because Indonesia does not test as much. While it might be true that Indonesia isn't testing as much, what's your basis for saying the Philippines really does have less cases when our testing is also not yet as widespread as it should be?
Hindi ko po alam how to answer that. Basta ang malinaw lang po sa akin, ang Indonesia po, with almost more or less the same cases as us, has 1/3 of the actual testing that we have conducted on our people, no? So, yun po ang aking basis for saying na hindi naman talaga totoo at conclusive na mas marami na tayong kaso sa dito sa Pilipinas compared to Indonesia. Mas marami lang tayong kaso na nalalaman na dito sa Pilipinas dahil nga po 3 times ang ating testing more compared to the testing done by Indonesia.
Sir, my last question is for NEDA Chief Carl Chua. This is from our business reporter, Ralph Rivas. Finance Secretary Dominguez said yesterday that the 2-week MECQ was not part of the plan and was unanticipated. So as acting head of the state planning agency, sir, how can you ensure that this revert to a stricter lockdown will be effective given that this decision was abrupt and not planned?
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, we have to be cognizant of the fact that this virus is not going to go away easily. In fact, when we first announced our macroeconomic framework in May, looking at the data as of March, what we have assumed there was a 6-month period similar to SARS. And that was the consensus also at that time, that you can impose a strong quarantine so that you can manage the virus and that you can recover sooner. And that was what many countries saw when they did their quarantines. The reality today, and this is what more countries are and more experts are realizing and telling us, is that the virus is going to stay for a longer period of time and that the vaccine will take some time to reach us. Although we are very ready, as Secretary Dominguez mentioned, we are ready to finance vaccines for the poorest 20 million. In terms of the growth estimates, we have factored that already. We are looking at the situation wherein we have to dance with the virus. We take 2 steps forward, 1 step backward when needed. And when we prepared the revised macroeconomic framework, we have already incorporated that. This is a health issue primarily, so we have to address the bottom line issue, which is on the health side. And that is why we agreed to have this 2-week period so that we can address that. So that when we are able to do so, the economic recovery and confidence will come back better. If we don't do this, then as the case rise, then I don't think the economy and the productivity of the country will be any better. So that is where we are. So we are doing this rebalancing and we have to address the health problems squarely before we can see better recovery. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Pia. Thank you, Sec. Yusek Roque now, please.
Okay, Secretary, a question from Tina Mendez of Philippine Star. Please share details of the talk between U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Locsin. What specific concerns did Secretary Pompeo discuss on our shared interest in the South China Sea? The U.S.-Philippine alliance is vital to a free and open Indo-Pacific, Pompeo said. Ano po ang bagong commitment ng ating bansa kaugnay dito?
I cannot respond po because I was not privy to the discussion. I defer to Secretary Locsin. Please ask Secretary Locsin.
Question from, may dalawang tanong po, si Luel Requilman of Banat Pilipinas News. Mula po ito sa Davao. DSWD announced recently na 14 1 million lang po ang bibigyan nila ng SAP second tranche after cleansing their list of beneficiaries. It includes 3.2 million na lang po sa wait-listed instead of 5 million. Hindi po ba dapat humanap ang DSWD na ipapalit sa mga inalis nilang hindi inalis nila sa lista?
Tama po yan. Hindi po dapat, hindi po imposibleng mangyari yan dahil ang Bayanihan We Heal as One Act po ay malinaw, no? Na kinakailangan magbigay ng ayuda 2 beses sa 18 million beneficiaries. At dapat po punuan ng DSWD yung natitira pang beneficiaries under the second tranche of SAP. Pero i-anunsyo po natin kung ano magiging desisyon ng DSWD dyan, but they are bound to comply with the law to give the ayuda, the second ayuda sa 18 million beneficiaries.
Yung second question po niya, financial service providers chosen by DSWD
ikaw yung magpaparemit using this business entities. Pero I think ang DSWD naman po took steps to ensure na pinakamababang rate po itong ibabawas sa mga beneficiaries ng ayuda. Thank you, Yusek. We go to Joseph Morong of GMA, please.
Yes, sir.
Nakita natin na meron na tayong higher awareness sa community and compliance with the minimum health standards. Isa yan sa pinaka-objective why we are going down, for us to be able to really educate and inform the community of the importance of these minimum health standards. Pangalawa, pag nakita na natin, may indicators kaming itinalaga. Halimbawa, dun sa barangay na pupuntahan namin, ipagbibigay alam na ang initial step natin lahat ay para mag-isolate muna tayo. Kung makakapag-test tayo, magta-test tayo. Pero sigurado na tayo kung ma-isolate na natin ang mga tao. And of course, with regard to testing, we are looking at about 5% of this whole population in that barangay would be able to be tested. Because they were identified either as a close contact or they were symptomatic. And of course, ang last na rin naman, pumunta sa baba, tulungan niyo po kami na mag-educate. Tulungan niyo po kami mag-trace, magpunta sa bahay-bahay para po mas ma-address po natin itong situation.
At bukod pa po dyan ay ang